Well, I had to go deep into the archives to figure out when you and I first met, but I think we've figured it out. It would have either been at a PWA show in Edmonton, but most likely it was High Impact Wrestling out of Regina and Saskatoon. But Rohan Raja, once known as a guy named Tony Cage, but now, oh, how things have changed. The first ever PWA Champions Grail champion. And I mean, we'll get to all that, but first of all, good to see you, man.
Yeah, good to see you too. It's crazy to look back and think because we were just talking before, like when did we first meet? And I think I remember the show because I'm pretty sure it was like my first Regina show I did. And yeah, now I'm thinking about that. Now it's just like it kind of feels like yesterday, and at the same time, it feels so long ago. It's weird.
And I had to even look back at pictures of you from back then because I mean you've changed so much over the years too. And I was like, because when we saw each other at a dungeon show, you're like, yeah, I met you at HIW. I was like, I haven't met this guy before, have I? And then you said who you were, and I was like, oh, I have. Yeah.
You know what's funny? One of the reps from Maple Leaf this past weekend used to work at TNA when I was there,
Yeah.
and then he had no idea like it was me. And then I was like, he's like, oh, so when were you with TNA? I was like, dude, you ref like two of my matches, I'm pretty sure. And then he started laughing. He looked at me, he's like, oh yeah, you used to have short hair, like smaller and stuff. I was like, oh yeah, yeah, that was
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. So, and for those that might also want to place a face, you were part of the Desi Hit Squad back in the day with
Yeah.
TNA as well. And yeah, man, you're like this weird metamorphosis of a wrestler because you've had three relatively different characters at least in your time that people have gotten to know a bit. But I mean, every time you've evolved and you've changed so differently. So if people want to go back and see some of the early days of Rohan Raja, besides NXT UK, where a lot of people know you from as well, especially people listening to this show. But I mean, really, dude, you're kind of a chameleon in a way, you know?
Yeah, it's like, do you know what's funny? I remember when I was thinking of a character name for before I came up with Tony Cage, and I was just like, I want to come up with a name that I can use and build something and like get all the reps in and figure out who I was. And then I feel like Tony Cage was the best to do it. And I always knew that my name's going to change. I was like, as soon as I get signed somewhere, my name's going to change, and then I have to evolve it again. And then I evolved it to Gasinda Singh as part of the hit squad. And then I was, and towards the end of it, I was putting more of Tony Cage into that. And then when Rohan Raja came about, I put all three into one. And then now it's more so, even now it's more just, it's how my personality is, but like very turned up. It's just like what I have inside, but I haven't like throughout my whole experience, I was trying to figure out ways on how to unlock it, and eventually it's kind of done like a full circle moment. And there's still layers to be added to. I've got so much that I know what's the next thing and the next thing, like chapters in my head. But I'm happy with my name though.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't want to change my
I, I
name.
think I think Tony Cage is probably one of the best like indie starter names too, because that could really be
Right? It's
anybody,
such a
you know?
generic name.
It's like I want to be like Johnny Cage, but how about Tony Cage?
I actually thought of Johnny Cage when I was thinking of it too. I was like, oh
Everybody
man,
does. I mean, everybody
yeah.
looks at oh, what's a cool cutting edge name, and usually a Johnny Cage or some sort of Jean Claude Van Damme character or something gets in there, right? But let's talk about just the. I said we weren't going to go into the typical, tell me how you got your start, blah blah blah. You were one of Lance's kids. Were you doing any other training before Lance Storm?
No, I when I was in high school, I did like amateur wrestling a little bit,
Okay.
but it wasn't it wasn't like full on like it would happen now and then. It was just kind of like as a hobby I was doing.
Yeah.
And yeah, my first proper like wrestling experience and everything was straight at Lance's school, and I trained there for 3 months full time, and then went straight on the indies, and obviously got better and better, and then I got trained by Yuki Ishikawa in Toronto. But those two are like my two main figureheads that have made me the wrestler I am today.
And that's something that for people that have followed your career a bit, and if you even look you up, I mean, the cool thing is you basically went from, yeah, a pinnacle school to start out with Lance and the Storm Wrestling Academy. And as you go on, you would always train and grow with different camps as you went too.
Yeah, and I feel like that's the best way to get better and to evolve yourself. And now it's like someone was asking me what my wrestling style was, and if I have to be specific, I like to say like technical meets brawler. Like, so I like to be like, you know, have that physicality, but I'm a very technical wrestler at the same time. But really, I can really play hybrid depending on who I'm in there with, and it's from learning all these different things. Even being at the PC in the UK, you're with all the British style of wrestling and learning that style, and then when you put it all together, it just feel like that's what makes it all easier. Now, when I wrestle, it's just I know what I'm doing, so I'm just having like so much fun. Like this past weekend was like such a really important deal, but it was like it's so fun. And even when I cut pre-tapes, I don't get nervous for pre-tapes. Like promos are probably my number one strong suit, but pre-tapes, I was like, I cut a couple live pre-tapes for Maple Leaf, and yeah, I was just having a joke before the camera started rolling with like the camera guys and stuff, and like yeah, it was just so much fun. I'm just at a point where I'm just really enjoying like what I'm doing, and I feel like a lot of people that I've come across, um, they don't necessarily know much else than their core thing that they've learned. So then they get really nervous when they're in matched in there with someone else. So there's that, and then a lot of people don't like the camera, which is you can't really teach that. I guess you get better at promos and stuff, but I feel like you have to have that natural sort of charisma that you be able to project to the camera and to the audience.
And that's a fair point too. You know, it's funny, even doing a show like this, we're talking by Zoom right now, but people are going to hear it mostly on the radio or by podcast. And sometimes people even just get nervous in this environment when the camera's on. But would you agree that it's not that you don't care as much? If anything, you probably care more now than you did because things are rising for you, but maybe you don't let that care hang you up mentally. Do you know what I mean? Like it doesn't sit in your brain and you don't psych yourself out of doing things as much.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point, because I think a lot of guys do that. That like, especially when it's a big deal. So just say if you have like there was times when I was at NXT and we'd have TV, and when you come down to it and think about, oh, what am I doing tonight? You've done it before, so you know exactly what you're going to do when you go out there. You've done it before, so I think. But then people then start to psych themselves out and be like, "Oh, what happens if this happens?" or something like that. But I've never really had that problem. My thing was more so like I was always thinking of like the next thing of like, oh, like when I started training, I was like, I want to get signed within 2 years. I want to get to WWE before this point, and I was just always planning ahead. And I wasn't like I was enjoying it, but I wasn't enjoying it in the moment. And I feel like I had this conversation with my dad, and my dad's like enjoy the ride, because you've had a hell of a ride so far, and you're just pretty much just getting started. It's like enjoy the ride, and then your performances as a whole just kind of get better, because then you have that just enjoyment factor, like you're having fun. Like before you go out there with big TV matches, producers and agents and everything, the thing that they'll tell you is go have fun. And I didn't realize what exactly that meant until like, exactly what that meant until I'd probably say even like the start of the year, really, because it's like it's more like there are shows where you're just goofing about and stuff and all that,
Yeah.
but it's like I really know what they mean when have fun when you're out there. Now it's like it is really cool to kind of look on it in hindsight.
What does that mean to you? Because if I'm hearing that, and granted, I've never worked for WWE on any level, but I've been in some of those areas, and I've got people I know like you who have been there. And, you know, in my head, I would picture anybody of an official level who basically is there determining how well you're doing, telling you, go have fun. means essentially in my mind, like, don't screw up. Like all I'd be thinking in my head is like, oh yeah, sure, I'll just go have fun, and if something goes wrong, I'm fired and I'm out on the street. But
that's what, honestly, funny you say that. That's what I thought it kind of meant at first. I was like, oh, that means like, that's a nice way of saying like, don't screw up, or
yeah.
like, but it's like, if I was to explain it, so if I use this weekend, for example, after I won the Champions Grail, I had a post-match interview, like straight after, live. And when I won the title, like I was just celebrating it, or like just soaking all that moment in. And then like, obviously my character, I like to, like, I'm a heel, and I just love like getting under the skin of people. When I was walking up the ramp and I saw Mackenzie Mitchell came out, I was like, oh yeah, let's go. Like, I was so hyped, and I was just like, this is so much fun. And then when I was talking, I had like a few pauses and stuff. I was like looking at the crowd and how like cheese they were getting. And I was like, this is sick. Like I loved it. And then like the next day, I did another live promo at the back, and just hearing and seeing the reactions behind the people on the cameras, and just like, it was like in the moment, like at each point, like I was thinking like, oh, this is so much fun, even whilst I was speaking, like delivering lines and stuff. And then like, and then I remember like when I closed the promo, I said, what did I say? I said, this Champions Grail wasn't just forged in excellence, it was forged for me. Nice. And then all I heard was like the crowd just like, oh, like a big like yell. And I was like, oh, that was sick. And then like, just things like that. I think it's just, I think with that too, I think the more experience you get, you unlock that thing, I guess.
And sometimes you plan it, and sometimes it just falls out of your face, right? I mean, you just never know when it's gonna hit a chord. But if you're just tuning in now, we're talking to Tony Gill, aka Rohan Raja. He is your new PWA Champions Grail winner. I do want to talk about that specific night with Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling, obviously happening this past weekend. A lot of eyes were on this thing. I've watched both nights now. I thought you did great. I thought the whole show was top to bottom, really fun. And even though you worked both nights, it was two very different nights for you, obviously, as far as matches go. Yeah. Going to this title, for those that didn't watch the show or don't know the history of it, so what they did is they basically amalgamated the Champions Grail from Ricky Dozan back in 1962 and kind of gave it the same lineage as the reclaimed title that Kenny Omega took in 2011. And then they basically talked to Ricky Dozan's family and had the Grail I don't even know what you call it, reborn, I guess, in the form of this new title. Is this to be the MLPW defining championship right now?
So this is the main title across the whole Pro Wrestling Alliance.
Perfect.
So this is like, yeah, this is the main thing, and it's even when you look at the belt and just see the history on it, and you've like got Ricky Dawson's name on it, and then just knowing what you were saying before, like they had to get approval from his family, and even seeing Kenny Omega's on it and Ricky Dawson's partner's name on it, it's like there's so much history in that title, and it's so surreal that I'm the first one to hold that. Like looking back now, it's like you look at this thing. I think that's why it's called Forged. Like the thing was forged, so it's like you've got Ricky Dawson's history and lineage, you've got Kenny Omega's history and lineage, and then I've just put my stamp on it. So now, like years down the track, when you look back on this in like 15 years, it's gonna be like a big. It is a big deal now, but like we're gonna look back on it and be like, damn, that was like the big sort of next jump moment sort of thing. And it's what I'm so excited with the whole thing too is just like when I take this around the world and represent, being champion but representing these other two guys that are like their lineages in this thing, it just makes it that much more special. And it's just like I have it behind me. Like it's just a reminder every time I see it. It's just like, damn, that this is a big deal.
This ain't some replica.
Yeah, and this is a fun fact. That title is 15 pounds of gold. So, like in comparison, a WWE title is around, I think it was around 7 pounds, 7, 8 pounds.
Wow.
And Raj was held it. And he's like, this is heavier than WWE title. And I was like, damn. And then like I remember like in my post match promo, I went to lift it up, and as I lifted it up, because I just had a match and stuff, and I'm speaking, and I'm getting tired.
Yeah.
I lifted it up, and I was like, "Oh man, this is heavy! Like this is heavy!" And like at the back, I don't even need to do it like a warm up. I'm just curling the title.
That would be the ultimate heel thing to do too. Next time you get to do a pre-tape before a match, just do your warm-up curls with the belt.
Yeah, I was thinking that. I was like, I have to do that.
That's fantastic. Again, we're talking to Rohan Raja right now, the first ever PWA Champions Grail title holder. Again, there's only a first, and for you to be in that spot compared to, again, this guy Tony Cage that I first met back in Regina, Saskatchewan. I think you lost that match to like Brett Evans, whose heel nickname was Muffin Top. So to give you an idea of where things have gone.
Man, you had to grind out in the indies, that's for sure. I had to grind.
So when it comes to staying in shape and condition now, I mean, you're on the road all the time. You're taking shows everywhere. You're going to be with us at Dungeon Wrestling coming up again here in Calgary soon on November the 10th for November Pain. But I mean, how often are you on the road, and where are you crisscrossing a lot to?
So it happens a lot. So I think the hardest thing with staying in shape isn't the training aspect. I train really hard, so like I don't want the listeners to be like, oh, the training's not that hard. Like training is really hard, but the hard part is like getting your diet, bringing your diet with you. So when I'm at home, it's easy to cook meals and to sort out my meals. Like meal prep's easy when you're at home, but then when you're on the road, you got to prep a certain amount of meals. Like, oh, how many do I need if I'm gone for a week or if I'm gone for a few days? And that's the sort of stuff when it gets hard. And then when you run out of meals, if it's late after a show or something, you have to see what's out there. And if there's nothing healthy open, you're looking at like McDonald's. Yeah. So it's like that's the really hard thing. But to be fair, in America and North and Canada, you always have like places like Denny's and stuff like that open. You can always modify what you eat there, which is really good. But when I was in Europe, you're like none of that was there. So you would have to have fast food past like if it was past midnight, you're having fast food. So that was that was really tough. But yeah, it's like so how much I'm traveling now. So like I'm selective on independence. I do like I want to go to very quality shows. So I look through on what that comes to me, and I'll accept or decline which ones I want to do. Obviously, I'm going to be traveling a lot more representing this Grail. But with that too, like I was in Detroit on and off filming something. It's something in the entertainment industry. That was, I'm based in Windsor, which is like the border of Detroit. But even after those long days, or if I have to be there for a certain amount of days, then come back and then cross back, it does get tiring. And it's just something that you just got to remind yourself of, like, why you do it. Like, I really always want to be in peak physical condition because you just never know, like, when the next big thing is happening. Like right now, I have to make sure I'm in my condition everywhere I go because I'm repping, like, I'm the poster boy for this place and I'm repping that Grail. Like, I don't want to go to shows and do appearances and do media appearances and interviews and I'm not in shape or I've just slacked off. Like, I've got these guys' names on that title. Like, this means a lot. So like, it just gives me more of that motivation where if I'm too tired to go to the gym or if I don't really want to cook something, I just remind myself of like why I'm doing it. And that's usually the deciding factor that always goes, oh, I better not have that chicken nugget.
Yeah, I need that voice a little more sometimes. I mean, I'm doing my own thing right now and it's working, but I mean, I'm also not trying to represent an entire alliance across countries now defending a
Well,
championship.
that's the thing. Like, it's not like with people who like to have like, you know, treat themselves and stuff like that. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just what I do is like I'm an athlete, so it's
Yeah.
that's what I have to do. But don't get me wrong, after the weekend of shows, I had like 2 large pizzas, huge thick pizzas. Like I went to town. So.
Well, maybe after November Pain, you and I can go out and find a Sammy shop or something, and we'll do some damage. But you mentioned Raj earlier, of course, talking about former WWE champion Raj Desi, who's been out on his own now doing his thing. He was a big part of the card for Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling as well. When that show finally got announced and those dates got announced, everybody was wondering what Scott D'Amore was up to. When you got there and saw how everything was, I know as a fan watching the production, the arena layout, I mean, it looked far better than even I imagined it could have. And that's not a knock on anything. It's just clearly there was a plan here to this thing. What was it like for everyone that was at the show? Was it excitement? Was it nervous? Was it go have fun? Was it don't screw up? Where would you put it?
It was like, so same thinking of you. It wasn't like knocking on anything, but I wasn't sure what it was going to look like when I'm there, because obviously all we've seen up to that point was you know, just the announcement and everything. But I knew it was going to be a big deal because it was like the revival of Maple Leaf, and having Scott involved. Scott never just settles; he always does something huge. But I just couldn't wrap my head around what is it going to look like, or like I just had no idea. And then as soon as I got there, and then especially when I walked to through the backstage area, I saw like this huge production meeting, and I was like, oh wow, like there was like a lot of guys there. Like there like guys working in the back was, you know, Jimmy Jacobs, D'Lo Brown. Like there was a lot of like big names at the back, and I'm like, oh damn. And then like when I walked out to the ramp and I saw the setup, I was like, wow. I was like, well, this is. Yeah, there was like a buzz in the air, and like everyone was like dressed nicely. Like it just everyone knew that it was a big deal. Like even before anyone even stepped foot into that place, we all looked at each other, and I was like, damn, this is a big deal. And I remember I was sitting on the ring at one point with Raj and a few others, and we were just looking around too, and I was just like, well, this is the start of something. Like really is the start. Like the rebirth is what they were calling the revival. But when everything was happening, it was more so like almost how I was explaining before. Like obviously, you know, with TV, you want to be on your cues and everything like that. But I just think everyone was just in such a buzz and a good mood and wanted to help out everyone. Like everyone was just really working as a team. Like whether it was like the production guys, the, you know, guys in Gorilla with Scott, like, or the talent, like everyone was just on the same page, and everyone knew that they had to put their best foot forward. And it seemed like everyone was just having a great time. And then at the back, that was probably my favorite backstage crew I've been a part of. Like I had so many of my friends on there. Like it was cool to have like all of us in one area, which was really cool. I think the only sort of close, like it's very similar when I go to Dungeon, but talking on a TV perspective, this was my funnest one.
That's great. That's great. Well, you are coming to Dungeon Wrestling November the 10th. You're going to be taking on Sean Moore. You guys have tagged against each other before in mixed tag action. And of course, you've had some other experience in the Dungeon Wrestling ring here. First of all, will you be bringing the championship with you?
I want to say never say never. Okay. So I'll leave that as a surprise. You never know.
I'm just wondering if you really want to add that much weight to your carry-on. I don't care if you actually bring the title out. Let's be honest, that's what you're worried about right now. It's all the extra carry-on fees. But
that was one of the first things too. I was like, man, this is gonna be really hard to carry around like throughout the airport and everything. But it's like that thing. At least I've got like bicep workouts.
You know what you got to do? You just got to wear it as a belt. You're wearing it. I mean, you're fine. I mean,
Right.
nothing wrong with a champion wearing his belt. Just, take it off when you go through the metal detector. I mean, it's fine.
Right.
I have very bad ideas. Okay, don't always listen to what I'm saying.
Oh, man.
uh, but when it comes down to it, here, I mean, Sean Moore, a guy you've faced in the ring before. Here, what are your thoughts going against this guy again?
I'm excited for this match. I'm excited for the whole show as a whole. But it was cool to. We had that mixed tag match the last time I was in Dungeon, and it was cool to be in the ring with him again. Like, I think the last time I wrestled him was maybe I was maybe a year in or something, like in 2016 or something like that. But if I was to say something to him, he obviously, everyone had eyes on this show on the weekend. It was a big deal. And like, I want him to bring his A game. Like, I really want him to, remind me when I first saw him, this guy's good. Like, I want him to bring the Sean Moore, not something where he's like, not putting 100% effort in. I want the guy that, I can look at and be like, this guy can give me a run for my money. So like, hopefully he shows up and gives that to me. And, and with the buzz I'm getting, it only benefits him to bring his A game, because there's a lot of eyes watching me right now, that more than people realize, that I know about. So yeah, it's definitely, if I was to say the pressure's on someone, it's on him.
I like that. I like that a lot, to be honest with you, and looking very forward to that match. Rohan Raja has been joining us here on McGuire on Wrestling. You can catch the video of this interview coming up on our YouTube page a little bit later on this week. Thank you so much for taking the time, man. Storylines, characters, everything aside, you've always been a great guy to deal with, work with. Seeing again how you've evolved yourself, not just from gimmicks, not just from names, but as a performer, as a wrestler, physically, mentally, it seems you're in a really good place with this as well. I mean, when WWE NXT folded, a lot of guys and girls were quick to say, what's next? And some of them we've heard from again, others we haven't heard from since. And you seem to be making the most of any opportunity you're given now. What do you hope to be in, they always say the 5-year plan, but what do you hope the future for Tony and for Rohan Raja have?
I think with me, why I got into wrestling is like, I obviously was a fan like many others, right? And ever since I was a kid, I've always wanted to be a champion in the WWE. I wanted to be a WWE champion, and that was my reasoning on why I wanted to get into wrestling in the first place. And I do understand that some people just want to get into it and like, I'm a wrestler or something like that. But this stuff takes like mileage off your body. Like this it hurts. Like you get injuries from it. Like when I'm like 70 years old, like I'm sure I'm going to have some sort of tough time with my joints and stuff like that. It's just given with athletes in any sport. So I want to make the most of it. And I think in a 5-year plan, I definitely want to be a champion in the WWE. That's my, if I was to pick something, that would be my long-term plan. And I know I'm going to get there. It's just, it's not if, it's just a matter of when. That's how confident I am. And if people have looked at my career and seen what I've done up to this point, no, that's it's very achievable for me. But right now I just want to just enjoy what I have and just keep riding this wave I'm on. And, I just want to represent, Maple Leaf and the Pro Wrestling Alliance and the Champions Grail, Ricky Dawson, Kenny Omega. Like, I just want to represent what I'm repping all over the world as a whole to the best of my ability.
Well, like I said, man, I seen you a few times live. I've seen you all over TV lately and the internet, and I think things are going your way, dude. So just keep with that mentality, and all things are possible. What I love too is that when anybody Googles Rohan Raja, is that you still have a WWE.com alumni page. And I would take that as a positive sign. I would take that as motivation, if nothing else. I mean, who knows what the future has to hold. Before I go, I got to ask you, you said it's right behind you. For those watching this on video, can you grab the title for us here and let's take a look at the belt? Sorry if it hurts your arms or anything, but
That's right. My dog's laying next to me, so I don't want to run him over with shit.
Oh wow. I like how it's on a shoe rack. This is the best.
I brought it out, so it's not normally placed there. I brought it out to because I knew you would probably ask for it. Turn
wow.
around. Yeah, it's lovely. So you've got on the right side here's the Kenny Omega's plaque, and then here you have Ricky Dawson's here with his partner. But it's and I'm not biased saying this, but it's probably the most beautiful belt in person as well, like that I've come across. Like it's lovely, and you see all the details in it, and you can tell how expensive this thing was. Like, especially just given the weight as well.
If anybody follows, Belt Van Dan, that's the guy who's largely responsible for this thing, and he was showing some close-up photos of it on his page, and that is something else. So
yeah, and he did such a great job. And there's some really cool Easter eggs that are in this title that I won't say because you'll see them.
Yeah.
So it's a cool thing to keep an eye on. But when I do my entrances and everything, get people listening, if they're watching me live, or even if it's on TV, just pay attention to some of the strap and you'll see some cool stuff on there. So it's really cool. It made me pop, and it still does when I see it.
He is the holder of the PWA Champions Grail, the first. He also made a huge impression on Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling. Here in Alberta, you'll get to see him coming up at Dungeon Wrestling's November Pain. He is Rohan Raja. Thank you so much, my friend.
Thanks, Mike. Great talking to you again.